There's something strange about the past. You think you have moved on, but it doesn't let go easily. You hear an old song, and suddenly you are back in a moment you thought you had moved on from. You walk through an old street, and emotions you had buried come rushing back like they never left. You see an old message, and for a split second, it feels like time hasn't moved at all. But then, reality whispers to you that those moments are gone. That version of life no longer exists, and no matter how hard you try, you can't bring it back. Yet something inside you tries anyway. You revisit old places, hoping to feel the same way you once did. You reach out to old people, hoping to reconnect with who you used to be. You try to recreate lost moments, hoping that maybe, just maybe, life will let you relive them. But when you try to relive it, it never feels the same. And that's where the pain begins. Whenever we try to silence the voice inside us that says, "This is your life now, it will never get better," by trying to recreate the past, the pain only increases. The feeling of being stuck becomes even worse. Today, we will go deep into why nostalgia can be a curse, how trying to recreate the past keeps you from moving forward, and how to break free from this illusion. Because the truth is that the past can be a warm blanket or a chain that holds you down. Nostalgia is comforting because it reminds us of a time when we were happy, secure, or deeply connected to people and places. But nostalgia becomes a curse when it turns into a measuring stick for the present. Imagine someone who had an amazing college life, close friendships, adventure, freedom. Years later, they compare every social interaction to that time and feel disappointed because nothing feels the same. They may even reject new friendships, resist change, and isolate themselves because nothing matches that golden era. And without realizing it, they stop allowing new experiences to enter their life. You must understand that the brain romanticizes the past. It filters out the struggles and keeps only the highlights. This creates an illusion that the past was perfect. Your mind holds on to the moments that made you feel alive, but forgets the pain that came with them. In many ancient traditions, suffering comes from attachment. The concept of impermanence teaches that clinging to what was prevents us from experiencing what is. When we refuse to let go of the past, we refuse to fully live in the present. Now, what happens when nostalgia gets so strong that you actually start chasing the past? I call this the Devdas Trap. If you haven't watched the movie, let me explain. Devdas is a fictional character who loses the love of his life. But instead of moving forward, he drowns in nostalgia, obsessing over what was, trying to relive old emotions, and in the end, destroying himself. And this is exactly what happens when we try to recreate what's already gone. I know this feeling. There was a time when I used to go back to the exact area where my girlfriend used to live. I would stand there, look at the same buildings, the same streets, the same walls. And the moment I saw those old places, something happened. The emotions came back. Why? because that place was anchored to those memories. The moment I stood there, the brain pulled up the nostalgia file. Suddenly, it felt like I was back in that moment, like nothing had changed. And when those emotions hit, the next thought comes in. If the emotions are still alive, maybe I can bring back the relationship too. That's the trap. You don't just feel nostalgia, you start believing you can bring the past back. You start thinking, if I say the right words, if I do the right things, if I just tried harder, I can make everything like it was before. And the moment you start chasing it, everything goes downhill. You start messaging people you shouldn't message. You start forcing conversations that don't feel the same. You start avoiding the present because the past feels more real. But the uncomfortable truth is, even if you get back the people, the places, and the situations, it will never feel the same because you have changed, because they have changed, because time has moved forward, and life is asking you to do the same. You ever wonder why the past feels like the real you? Like, back then I was alive. Back then I was complete. Back then I was happy. And now you feel like just a faded version of who you used to be. That's because we attach our identity to external things, relationships, careers, phases of life. And when those things disappear, we feel like we have disappeared too. But the truth is, you were never those things. You were the person experiencing them. Lao Tzu once said, if you realize that all things change, there is nothing you will try to hold on to. Let that sink in. The only reason we suffer is because we try to hold on to something that has already changed. We refuse to accept that life has moved forward. And the moment we stop fighting that truth, we set ourselves free. At this point, you may be wondering, if the past is gone and the future is uncertain, what do I do now? Or you might be asking yourself, how do I move forward when I feel like nothing in the future will ever compare to the past? The answer is simple. You don't need to erase the past. You just need to stop chasing it. You don't have to forget what was. You have to stop believing that it is the only place where happiness exists. You can follow these steps to make this happen. Step 1. Stop measuring today against the past. The past is a memory, not a blueprint for happiness. Every moment is new, every experience is fresh, but when you compare the present to the past, it will always feel like something is missing. Ask yourself, if you stopped comparing today to yesterday, would you still be unhappy? Now, let's look at step 2. Redefine your identity. If your happiness is owned by a past version of life, you will always be a prisoner of it. Instead of asking, how do I get back to who I was? Ask, who am I meant to become now? Think about it. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago, and that's okay. Let me illustrate this with an example. A retired athlete might never relive their peak years of performance. But does that mean their passion for the sport is gone? No, they can become a mentor, a coach, a motivator. Instead of trying to recreate their past successes, they can channel their love for the sport into something new. Your past does not define you, it prepares you for your next chapter. Now let's understand step 3. Accept that life moves forward. Change is not the enemy. Resistance to change is. The more you fight change, the more you suffer. But when you embrace it, you free yourself. The Japanese Zen principle of wabi sabi teaches us to find beauty in imperfection and impermanence. Nothing stays the same, everything evolves. And that's what makes life beautiful. Your past was meaningful, but its purpose was to shape you, not trap you. Let's move to step 4. Create new meaning instead of clinging to old meaning. Every phase of life brings new opportunities, new relationships, and new experiences, but only if you allow them. For example, someone grieving the loss of a loved one may never replace them, but they can create new sources of love and connection. You must understand that the heart does not have a limit on love, on meaning, or on joy. But if you spend your days looking backward, you will never see the new doors that are opening right in front of you. And finally, step 5. Shift focus from what was to what can be. The past is a chapter, not the entire book. If you keep rereading the old pages, you will never discover the new story that is waiting to be written. Instead of asking, "How do I get back?" ask, "What is possible now?" Because the hopeful truth is that every moment creates new possibilities, but you will never find them if your eyes are stuck in the past. Your past was real, it mattered, but it was never meant to be a place to live. It was meant to be a place to learn from. Stop chasing ghosts. Stop searching for what's already gone. Make space for the future to surprise you, because life isn't meant to go backward. It's meant to move forward. And if you are ready to finally move forward and create a life that is even more meaningful than your past, then I invite you to join me inside FoundationX. This is where we retrain the mind, reprogram our emotions, and build a future that is built on clarity, purpose, and action. Because the past is not where your best moments exist. Your best moments exist in the future. You just have to take the first step towards them. If you are ready for that step, I'll see you inside Foundation X. Until then, take charge.